Can I ask you something? Have you ever held back sharing an idea? Not because you doubted the idea, but because you weren't sure how it would sound coming from you? The useless advice that people will give you is to stop doubting yourself, have more trust in yourself. But what if that's not the actual problem? What if you're not struggling with self-doubt at all? Think about it. You're not afraid that your ideas aren't good. You know that they are. You worry about communicating them in a way that others will actually get them. That's not a confidence problem. That's not a self-doubt problem. That's a skill set problem. And if you've ever wondered why your hard work still isn't getting noticed, stick around, because later in this video, I'm going to share 5 signs that it might not be your ideas or your work performance that needs fine-tuning. It might just be your communication skills. Because sharing ideas effectively takes a completely different skill set than having them. And most of us were never taught that second part. It's the reason so many capable people stay invisible. Again, it's not because they lack confidence. It's because they never learned to communicate confidently. Most of the introverts that I know, they have a strong sense of inner awareness. They know what they know, and they want to share it. And one-on-one, they do great. Their ideas, they land, and their insight, it all makes sense. But when it comes to speaking up in front of a group, when all eyes might turn on them, that's when everything changes. And they start overthinking their words instead of trusting their ideas. They dread seeing the blank stares or the confused looks. And let's not even talk about the rude interruptions and the talking over. And then there's the awkward silence, and they're afraid that their brain is just going to freeze. So what do we do instead? We share our ideas quietly behind the scenes, hoping that someone else will present our ideas so that we don't have to. And when we do that, it's not because we doubt the idea itself. It's because we don't know how to communicate it confidently. Over time, that skill gap turns into a self-perception gap. You don't stop believing in your ideas, but you do start blaming yourself for not speaking up sooner, faster, or better. And what happens next? Frustration, discouragement, disappointment, all of those emotions, those set in because we're watching other people get noticed for their work, their insights that we helped shape behind the scenes. And that disconnect between what you know and what others see in you, it can leave you questioning your real value, your contributions. But your ideas and your perceived value, that's not what you should be questioning. It's your communication skill set, because that is a very different problem to solve, and it is solvable. So here's what happened to me. One Christmas, my mother-in-law asked me to read a poem out loud in front of the family. And I remember the paper trembling in my hands. Well, the paper wasn't trembling, but my hands certainly were. My voice was quivering through every word, and my mind was screaming, "What am I doing?" But that moment sparked something inside of me, because afterwards I realized it wasn't that I didn't have anything to say, that I didn't want to read this poem in front of the family. It was that I didn't know how to do it in a way that felt safe. 3 months later, I found myself in a room full of strangers, Toastmasters, and all of these people, they were learning the same skills that I desperately needed to learn. How to communicate clearly and calmly while every eye in the room was on me. And do you want to know the very first thing that I realized in this experience? It's that most people are not born with great communication skills. They learn them. And since I've always loved learning new things, that realization gave me hope. But here's the problem. You can't learn public speaking or even leadership skills in a room all by yourself with your headphones on. So every week, it was hard, trust me, it was hard, but every week I went back to another meeting and I practiced. And I stood in front of the room, equal parts red-faced nervousness and committed determination. And you know what happened? Little by little, my nervous system began to catch up with the version of me that I knew was inside. After my first few speeches, I started seeing myself differently. Because you know what? Most people, even extroverts, they would never have the courage to do what I was doing. And so many members of my club, they actually never come back after they give their first speech. I can only guess that they decided that playing small, playing safe, it suited them better. But it probably didn't. But for me, I had my dreams, and learning to communicate more effectively, it was the only way that I was going to be able to achieve them. And some of the feedback that I heard in those meetings, they gave me clues as to how I was showing up small in this big, sometimes scary world. And we'll get to those in just a few minutes. It only took a few months of being in Toastmasters, surrounded by these people, learning new skills, sharing what they knew, what they learned, what they were learning, when things started shifting for me at work and even within my family dynamic. Not because I was pretending to be someone that I wasn't, but because I started showing up externally as the person I already was inside. All right, as hokey as this sounds, I found my voice and I started using it. I know it's so cliche, but sometimes cliches come from truth, right? Anyway, so once you understand that communicating confidently is a skill and not a personality trait, you start to recognize the subtle ways that you've been downplaying your own abilities. So let's talk about a few of those subtle signs, the small behavioral habits that seem harmless but actually reinforce that old perception gap. And as I share these, notice which ones sound familiar. Feel it in your body somewhere. We're not doing this to judge ourselves, but to spot the moments where a new skill set could change the flavor of that result. The first sign is that you apologize for things that don't need an apology. You've probably heard this one before, but have you paid attention to whether you do it? You say sorry for taking up space, for interrupting, or for needing a moment to think. It sounds polite, but underneath it's often a preemptive way of saying, please don't see me as a problem. So the next time, try swapping I'm sorry for thank you. Thank you for waiting for me to finish my thought. Thank you for finding another place to sit because I'm already set up here. It shifts your energy from shrinking to being self-assured that you have a place there. The second sign is that you downplay your ideas even when you know that they're good. You may say things like, well, I don't know if this makes sense, but, or it might be something like, well, this might sound like a silly idea. And you say those things before you start sharing. And it's a protective reflex. It's softening that risk of being judged. So instead, anchor your contribution with confidence, even if you do it quietly, with a soft voice. Here's another perspective that might help. Or I've been thinking about this, but from a different angle. Let me share it with you. And I know that that's easier said than done. That's where practicing these skills comes in. Just like I practiced in Toastmasters meetings. And I have a link in the description to a program that I think teaches the same skills that I learned, but you can do it from home, on your own time, even on your phone. So I invite you to check that out. The key thing I want you to remember and focus on is that these are skills you can develop. It takes time. Yes, I won't lie to you and say that you can do it at the snap of a finger. That was a very bad snap. But it will pay off for you. It will pay off for you in more than just workplace promotions. It's going to help improve your relationships. It's going to make you feel better about yourself and your contributions to the world at large. And you can do this even if you have a naturally soft voice. The third sign is that you overprepare and then you stay silent. You spend hours working on your presentation. You think of every question someone might ask, and you have the perfect response ready. But then when the moment comes, you freeze, or you wait for someone to ask you to contribute. Energetically, what you might be signaling to the room, because you're feeling so uptight and closed in, is that you really don't want to contribute. One way to break this loop is to do something before the meeting even starts. Approach the facilitator and let them know that you have an idea that you'd like to share during the discussion. And it primes both you, the facilitator, and the room to expect to hear your voice. I know it's super scary. I get it. This is why this is a skill that you have to develop over time. Let your nervous system settle in with every little step. That's why it takes time. But I also know that you have an inner courage that you haven't even begun to tap into yet. And I have to tell you, I can hardly wait for you to start seeing it in yourself. You are ready to do amazing things. The fourth sign that you may be holding yourself back is that you focus on what's missing from your ideas instead of what's there, what's present. You hesitate to speak up because you haven't figured out every little detail yet. And it's like you think that incomplete means unworthy. But leadership communication isn't about having all of the answers. In fact, it's about opening up the discussion. So the next time you're overthinking things and you don't have everything figured out, try this. Try saying, I have an idea and I'd love your input to fill in some of the details. It invites collaboration. It shows others that your mind is open to solving the problem. The fifth sign is that you wait for permission to join the conversation because you don't want to interrupt or talk over people. And because of that, you stay quiet until the moment has passed. Meanwhile, the people who keep interrupting, they tend to run the show, and so key topics are often overlooked. So let's reframe the whole interrupting people thing. It's not rude to add your insight. It's actually a responsible action. Keeping a meeting on topic is another skill that you can develop. But to get started, try this. Say the speaker's name. Wait for them just to pause because they heard their name. They're going to pause. And then add, I'd love to add something when you're finished. This is a signal of respect. It's a signal of readiness. And when that person finishes, they know and the room knows that you have something to add. So these moments, these 5 moments, may seem small, but each time you overlook them and you sit there silently, they compound. And each time you hold back the world, but more importantly, you see a little less of what you're capable of. But when you start practicing new ways to communicate, one meeting, one idea, one sentence at a time, that gap starts to close. You stop underestimating yourself and you start communicating from a place of grounded confidence. And if your first thought is to jump on the old, if only I wasn't so quiet bandwagon, whoa there, Nelly. I am an example of an introvert who's far on the introvert's end of the spectrum, and I learned to speak clearly and communicate confidently in both work and family situations. So I'm here to tell you that your quiet nature was never a problem, and it never will be the problem. In fact, I love pointing out to introverts that our quiet nature, it's actually our superpower. So this week, I invite, I encourage, and I challenge you to notice one moment when you minimized yourself. Maybe it's when you hesitated to speak up, or when you told yourself, oh, it's fine. Someone else kind of said what I meant. And in that moment, pause. Ask yourself, am I underestimating my ability or just under-practiced at expressing it? That one question, it interrupts the old pattern, the old stories you've been telling yourself, and it gives your brain the space to choose something new. When you start to see yourself differently, you're going to start acting differently, presenting yourself differently, holding yourself differently, and the world has no choice but to respond differently. If this message resonated with you, let me know in the comments. What's one moment this week where you caught yourself holding back because you felt too afraid or too uncomfortable speaking up? And if you liked today's video, be sure to subscribe and keep watching so you can keep shifting the way you see yourself so the world starts to see you differently too. We know there's so much more to you than the world sees, and it's time to change that. And it's time for us to change the world the quiet, confident leader way.